Here's what we do. We basically do three things. We offer software, data, and consulting all around the broadcast industry, both buy and sell side in Canada. We work with pretty much everyone in the industry, and again, with an exclusive focus on Canada, and an equal split between the buy and sell side. And I think that gives us a sort of fairly unique perspective. The other thing that informs our perspective is we have a lot of unique industry research, which we did not, frankly, for events like this, but we did for a product development point of view. We realized that as we made our own products, we needed to know more about what the industry was doing now, what it was going to do. So we have multiple streams. We have an unrivaled, we believe, unrivaled series of in-depth interviews. They're about 90 minutes in length with lots of different people across the industry, including a group of people who are notably absent today, which is advertisers, about what they see about the industry now and going forward. They're audio recorded. We then transcribe them and analyze them for key themes. We have a group of people, brave brothers and sisters, called NLogic innovators, with whom we share earlier ideas, with whom we get feedback about iterative developments we're looking to do. And when we get to a particular area of interest, so for this group, I think a particular area of interest is the actual process of buying and planning TV. We've got lots of in-depth information from focus groups held with real-life TV buyers. And then lastly, like I'm sure a lot of you do the same thing, we have, as a company, bi-weekly Market Horizon meetings where we get together, essentially desk research from media and technology about this industry and about the industry internationally and what things may affect our industry. So I want to share with you a few things that we found, a few nuggets, if you will. So the first thing we found, has come across strongly all day today and all yesterday, which was that fundamentals remain really, really strong. Unprompted and prompted, we heard from multiple buyers, planners, presidents, advertisers, that TV works. And they, depending on the size of the company, it was either from the fantastic kind of modeling that we saw examples of just now, or it was just more sort of anecdotally, they knew that when a campaign was on, that things happened. So I think we mustn't lose sight of the fact that the fundamentals of the industry are incredibly strong. We also found some opportunities to build on this strength. I'm not going to go through all of them now. If you'd like to have a more in-depth conversation about them, let me know. But I want to touch on a few of them today. So there's three I'm going to talk about today. One is, these are things we heard mainly from the agencies. Reducing slippage, creating systemic ROI, and improving the mechanics. So the first sort of frustration, or first opportunity, if you like, is for the industry to reduce the slippage between a plan and a buy. And we've heard this in different guises across today. But there's a general sense that the advertiser or the agency has a fairly nuanced picture of who they want to go after. And as they translate that down into a TV buy, you lose some of that nuance, you lose some of that color, some of that depth. And so it's not necessarily creating smaller groups, it is creating more focus groups to create more linearity between who you look at when you're planning and who you look at when you're buying. So we're going to intersperse a couple of quotes, but one of them is, there is a gap between explaining, here's all the fancy research we did using PMB and all this stuff, and here's your Women 25-54 buy. So it's an opportunity here for TV to reduce that slippage. The other opportunity is to create what we call systemic ROI. So I'll give you a quote. I find that over the last couple of years, clients are like, what's my ROI for everything? They're sitting there saying, I spent $1 million on television, what was my ROI? What's my sales lift? And this has always puzzled me. And across the last few years in particular, this has puzzled me, because we heard time and time again this issue of like, TV needs to show ROI. And yet, everything we see and everything we read clearly demonstrates the ROI of TV. So if ROI was the problem, that's sort of been solved. So why is it still being asked for? Do you see that kind of weird conundrum? Again, and we're hearing it again today, we heard it at the panel, that, well, we need to show ROI, and then right after there's like, here's the ROI. So what's going on here? And one way I've begun to think about it is that you can think about research as really fitting in only one of two categories, two buckets. There's what happens at the trade, and there's everything else. And what happens in our industry is that the effort tends to get spent, understandably, on the everything else bucket. So that's fantastic ROI studies, that's econometric modeling, that's all that kind of stuff. And less effort around ROI is typically spent around what happens at the trade. But what really shifts dollars, I think what will lead to impact on dollars, is the other way around, is what happens at the trade as opposed to everything else. So it comes down in a way to the mechanics of actually what happens when the money's being transacted between a buyer and a seller. And that leads me to what I think is the third opportunity for TV, which is improving the mechanics. I said coalface, but I think that's a Britishism. So there's going to be about half the room which will understand that, considering half the room is from Britain today. I'm just going to say planning and everyone think I'm smart. So improving the mechanics is something which I think of as an intangible opportunity. And by intangible, I mean it's not something that is typically explicitly said. It's not something where people say, you know what, if we made the mechanics of buying and planning TV better, I'll spend more money there. Frankly, because you probably don't want to admit that's the reason why you're not spending money. You don't want to admit that I'm going to spend money on a platform where it's easy as opposed to calling a rep where it's difficult. But I nonetheless think it's an opportunity. Because right now, if you look at the whole system of TV planning and buying, the user experience, the UX, if you like, is not great. And that's me being sort of British and understated. So it's not a great process. So I think improving that will lead to great opportunities. Here's a little piece of analysis we did that just focuses on one part of this whole user experience of TV planning and buying. So this is what a buyer goes through to buy a campaign. And each of these boxes, there's lots of steps. Some of those steps are fairly intensive. So one of those boxes is like revise buy. Well, revise buy is lots of different phone calls or lots of different emails, no longer faxes, but lots of different manual steps. It's an incredibly intensive process. And if you stand back from it and look at it systemically, it's kind of weird that there are separate TV buying teams. That means it's kind of difficult as a separate team. And I think another key point, and we've touched on this a little bit today as well, is that with TV, this is what we heard from medium agencies, medium-sized agency. With TV, you still only get to find out at the end how you did. So I think the opportunity here is to improve what happens at the trade by improving the mechanics of what happens at the trade. And I think there's three main ways we can make it better. And this isn't about necessarily it's not changing the metrics, it's not changing the data within it, it's just changing the mechanics. We can make it faster, we should make it more flexible, we should provide more feedback. We should, in essence, create a feedback loop. And those of you who are in product development will be very familiar with this concept of build, measure, learn. Essentially, you have to set something up, you measure how it's doing, and you learn. And again, this is just changing how the interface may work or how the process may work, changing so you get things daily, not every month or every quarter. It's not changing the numbers in it necessarily. So I think there are these opportunities that are possibly sort of tangential and possibly intangible, but I think actually can end up being the real opportunities facing TV right now. But all that we're talking about and all the opportunities that I listed today, at the heart of it comes down to data and mixing different data sets or evaluating different data sets. And here's why I'm going to use an extended cooking metaphor for the next 5 to 7 minutes. So please bear with me as I explain it. I tried when I was rehearsing this, going ahead without explaining why I was using a cooking metaphor. And I just ended up confusing my wife. So this is why I'm using a cooking metaphor. I was watching a program on Netflix about elite chefs. It's called Chef's Table. It's fantastic. It's terrible. And it occurred to me when I was watching this terrible program that there are immense parallels between cooking and how to use data. And it also occurred to me that in our industry, we're typically not very good at understanding the basics around data. And so what I want to do is draw some parallels between cooking, partly because hopefully if I have a cooking metaphor, it will lead you to remember it more, and because it's more interesting than looking at graphs. So let me explain what I mean, and let me explain the parallels between cooking and using data. So the first thing you need to do, and this links to what Saif was saying, was you need to pick the right recipe. You need to know what you're trying to achieve, and oftentimes you need to get the advertiser to be really clear about what they are trying to achieve. Because making this type of dish, delicious though it is, by which I'm referring to the chip-covered pizza, is a different type of recipe than if you're cooking something that has a velouté of beet in it. And it seems obvious, but so many companies we work with don't seem to have a clear idea of what they're trying to achieve when they start off on a data project. And that data project could be putting a dashboard together, or it could be creating a model. It doesn't really matter on the complexity. You need to be really clear about and have lots of internal alignment, lots of internal discussions about what recipe you're using and what you're trying to get out at the end. You then need to pick the right ingredients. Different ingredients in cooking are good at doing different things. If you put salt where sugar's supposed to be, it's not going to work because it does something different. Different data are good at different things. And oftentimes what we find is that people misalign the purpose of the data or the strength of the data with what they need that data to do. So for example, they'll look for massive granularity in a panel study, or they'll look for massive stability in an opt-in online study. Those two things are misaligned. You need to make sure that you're picking the right tool for the job and the right ingredient for the dish you're making. The next thing you need to do, and I think this is probably where we fail the most as an industry, is we need to focus on quality. There are, I don't know, lots of you probably have children, and we're trying to teach our children to eat better. And so you go to a supermarket and you say, pick me some broccoli or whatever. And they come back with the one that's moldy and has things growing out of it that aren't broccoli. You need to teach them about what good looks like. And when it comes to data, the same is true. You need to learn what good data looks like. So if you're looking for a large-scale quant survey or a large-scale quant study, what elements make up a large, good quant study? It could be the robustness of the sample. It could be the rigorousness of the editing process. Whatever it is, you need to figure out what good looks like and have someone internally who's dedicated that. You need to know where it's coming from. You need to get to know your suppliers. So I was talking with a client of ours who works at a large international agency, and he was getting training on a programmatic tool. And there was one step in the training where they said, and now get your profiles. And he asked a great question, which is, where's that profile data come from? And they didn't know. And that profile data informed the rest of the process. They didn't know where that data came from, let alone whether it was good data or not. And that's terrifying. And if you're not terrified by that, you really aren't paying attention. And you should be. And you need to get to know your suppliers. Who are the people you're getting the data from? Where is it coming from? When you work with us, we spend enormous amounts of time testing, retesting, checking, rechecking the data. So you know that what comes from us, what comes out of our door is always the best quality we can make it. Get to know your suppliers. Know what checks they do. Know what verification processes they have. In the same way that you should get to know the supply of your ingredients. Because a quote that came out to me from this program, I think, is telling when it comes to data, which is a meal can only be as good as its ingredients. It doesn't matter how good your dashboard is, how pretty the charts are, how snazzy your econometric model is, if what's going into it is garbage. If the meal you're putting together has terrible ingredients, the meal will be terrible. It's the same with data. So you could do something like this. You could say, for example, well, I know what good looks like for the type of data I'm trying to pick. What good looks like for us is, for this type of data, is random sampling, great response rates, rigorous editing, refresh frequently, and they all begin with R. I hope you noticed that. But those are the things that make up what good data looks like. Then you go through and you say, okay, these are how important each one of them are, and then you go and score your particular data sources. And what worries me when I talk to clients about projects they're putting together, this process often just doesn't exist. They just pick whatever's there. They don't know where it comes from, they don't know what response rates are, they don't know anything about it, and they think that by putting it together that you're going to get a great meal. It doesn't happen that way. And then second to last, you need to know how to combine them. We touched on this earlier, and Saif was talking about why we haven't made progress, and I have a theory about that. And one of the theories that we haven't made progress, although I actually believe we have made quite a lot of progress, but why we've not made more is because we don't always have the right balance in the kitchen. By which I mean the right resources of how to bring these ingredients together. You need a combination of people, and you need a combination often within the same person of people who understand how we put stuff together, but also why. In our experience, it tends to get split this way. How is the programming people, or the BI team, or the business transformation people, and the why is the researchers. And what we found time and time again is that a project will first sit with the researchers, and they'll know why we're trying to do something. They'll know why a dashboard is trying to be put together, or why a model is being created. They don't know how. They can't code. They can't bring together technology. And so it goes to the other side. It goes to the BI team. They know how to put stuff together. Technically, they can build a fantastic dashboard, but they don't know why, and they don't know what to do with the data. And with either result, you do get a pretty bad meal. And so a lot of these projects stall because you don't end up with the result that was hoped for. We also think that one of the reasons why these projects haven't gone forward at the speed they could have done is because getting the data into the projects isn't as good as it has been. So we think, surprise, surprise, we have a solution for that, which is Connect's API. That's what everyone wake up when I said that. Connect's API is a way of delivering one of the most important pieces of this puzzle, which is the gold standard measurement that is numerous, directly into people's systems, whether those systems are dashboards, whether they're models, whatever they are. It's the only one in Canada. It's the first in Canada. So we think the Connect's API helps you get those meals ready more quickly. And again, injects the gold standard that this industry still relies on where you need it to be. And lastly, you need to taste and adjust as you go. So this is a key cooking thing. You make sure when you've put all the ingredients together, you've picked your recipe, you've got a good balance in the kitchen, that you're going through and checking as you go through that it is what it's supposed to be. So what should it taste like is the first question you should ask. And again, this is a question that isn't always asked in these projects, I find. And that really means when it comes to data, have you determined what good results look like, which is surprisingly infrequent. Oftentimes we'll see people come up with a result and create a model, and then we ask, well, is it good? And like, probably, looks okay, which is kind of worrying when you think about it. Because then oftentimes what we do with that is go, here's what actually happened. So determine ahead of time what good results actually are. And does it then taste right? Have you checked it before it's finished? So are you going through at regular intervals checking to make sure this is the dish that actually we thought we were going to make? There have been many, many instances where a project's been finished and delivered with clients of ours, and it's sort of not been used because it wasn't quite what people thought they were going to get. So are we checking on the way through that it's doing what it should be doing? And if it isn't working, if it doesn't taste right or it doesn't taste as it should, what should I adjust? And it could be any of the things we've talked about before. It could be the recipe. It could be that what we were trying to do wasn't the right thing. It could be the ingredients, that they were misaligned. I was trying to get data to do something it couldn't. It could be the quality. It's just bad data or inappropriately bad data. Or it could be the kitchen staff. I didn't have the right people on the team getting this job done. So in summary, I think there are huge opportunities that await. The foundations of this industry are very, very strong. I know firsthand how much work is being done to improve it. I think there are many opportunities to grow on those foundations to make it even stronger, often around the mechanics of actually where the trade happens. And I think with things like Connect's API, we're very excited to be able to help make those mechanics a lot better. But underneath it all, we mustn't forget the reality of what we're dealing with, which is data. And we need to make sure that as an industry, we know how to cook. We know how to make sure that things we're putting together are what we want and are of the right quality. Thank you very much.